Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're tackling a subject that, on paper, sounds like it belongs in, I don't know, a dusty library basement.
Oh, absolutely. It had that
Yeah,
reputation.
right. But when you actually read the source material, specifically this breakdown of the 19th century heroic age of linguistics, it feels a lot less like homework and a lot more like an Indiana Jones movie.
It really does. I mean, it's got everything. Lost civilizations, secret codes, a gang of four, and this quest to find the mother of all languages.
And that's the hook, isn't it? We're looking at this specific slice of time, the 1800s, where the study of language just went from being this like philosophical, artsy hobby to a hard, rigorous science. It's basically the story of how we stopped just listening to words and started, dissecting them like frogs in biology class.
That is a surprisingly accurate analogy. It really is the shift from just description to actual explanation. Before this era, scholars would look at a word and say, oh, isn't that interesting? By the end of this era, they were looking at a word and saying, this word has changed according to a law, almost like a law of physics, and I can prove it.
So our mission today is to track these detectives, because they really were detectives. We're going to see how they figured out that languages aren't just these random bags of sounds, but that they evolved from common ancestors according to, well, strict rules.
And we have quite the cast. A British judge in India, a Danish genius who was ignored because he didn't write in a, quote, major language.
And the famous fairy tale writer Jacob Grimm.
Him too, and that rebellious gang of four you mentioned.
Okay, let's start with the judge. Sir William Jones. The year is 1786. Now, usually when we talk about scientific breakthroughs in the 18th century, we're thinking of a lab in London or Paris. But this starts in a courtroom in Calcutta.
It does. Jones is a fascinating figure. He was a polyglot, which is, putting it mildly. He knew Greek, Latin, Persian, Arabic. And when he got stationed in India as a judge, he decided he needed to learn Sanskrit to understand the local legal codes.
As one does.
Right. But as he's studying Sanskrit, he starts noticing things that, well, they just shouldn't be there. He's looking at the Sanskrit word for king, Raja, and he thinks that sounds a lot like the Latin rex.
Okay.
He sees the Sanskrit for father, pitar, and it looks almost exactly like the Latin pater.
All right, but let me play devil's advocate here. Couldn't that just be a coincidence? Or borrowing? I mean, we use the word sushi in English, but English isn't related to Japanese.
No, absolutely. And that was the prevailing theory for a long time. People thought it was borrowing, or maybe that everything just came from Hebrew because of the Bible.
Right.
But Jones looked deeper. He didn't just look at the vocabulary. He looked at the grammar, the verb structures, the way the words were built. And in his famous third anniversary discourse, he drops this bombshell.
I have the quote right here. He says the similarities are so specific that no philologer, that's what they called linguists back then, could examine them without believing they sprung from some common source, which perhaps no longer exists.
That phrase, which perhaps no longer exists, that is the big bang of historical linguistics.
He's saying that Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit are siblings.
Exactly. And if they are siblings, that means their mother is dead.
Proto-Indo-European.
That's the one. He sparked the entire search for that lost mother tongue. Now, Jones didn't invent the comparative method, but his prestige, his position, it gave the idea the momentum it needed. He set the stage. But here's the thing. Jones gave us the what. He didn't give us the how.
Right. He had a hunch, a brilliant one, but he didn't have a system.
For that, we have to move to Germany in the early 19th century.
Yeah.
And you have to understand the vibe of that era. This is the Romantic period.
Romantic, like poetry, Byron and Shelley.
Romantic, like a reaction against the cold industrialism of the century before. The Romantics were obsessed with nature, biology, and the soul of things, and that included language.
Okay.
Enter the Schlegel brothers, Friedrich and August. They're the ones who coined the term comparative grammar.
But they viewed language in a very specific way, right? The notes mention they saw it as an organism.
Yes. This is crucial to understanding the whole century. They didn't see language as a tool that humans invented, like a hammer. They saw it as a living thing. Friedrich Schlegel famously said language has a life cycle: birth, growth, maturity, and decay.
Decay. That sounds a little judgmental.
Oh, it's incredibly judgmental. You have to remember, this is the era of rising nationalism. The Schlegels and their peers, they classified languages into a hierarchy.
A hierarchy?
Yeah. At the bottom, you had isolating languages like Chinese, which they thought were primitive. In the middle, agglutinating languages like Turkish. And at the very, very top,
Let me guess. the languages they spoke.
Or the ancestors of them, the inflectional languages like Sanskrit and Greek. They saw the complex grammar of Sanskrit, with all its cases and endings, as the organic peak of human expression.
So they thought history was just this long slide into rot. Like, because English has lost a lot of those complicated endings, we're speaking a decayed language.
Yeah. Precisely. They thought modern languages were just broken versions of this ancient perfection. It's a very pessimistic biological view. But while the Romantics were waxing poetic about the spirit of language, there's a guy in Denmark who was actually doing the math. Rasmus Rask.
Ah, the unsung hero. I felt bad for Rask reading this.
You should. Rask is the true originator of the scientific method here.
Yeah.
He's the one who realized you can't just say, hey, fire in English looks like Führer in German, so they're related. That's just guessing.
Right.
Rask said you need rules of letter changes. You need systematic correspondences.
But he wrote in Danish.
He did. And in the 1800s, if you weren't writing in German, French, or English, the international scientific community basically just pretended you didn't exist.
Yeah.
So Rask did the work, but the next guy got the credit.
And the next guy had a much, much bigger brand, Jacob Grimm. I have to ask, we were talking about the Jacob Grimm, Hansel and Gretel, Cinderella.
The very same. We know him for the fairy tales, but in the world of linguistics, he is an absolute titan because of Grimm's law.
Okay, let's unpack Grimm's law, because this is where we really move from languages are related to languages change in a predictable way. The notes call it a sound shift.
Think of it like a rotation, a chain reaction. Grimm took Rask's ideas and polished them. He noticed that when you compare the classical languages like Latin or Greek to the Germanic languages, English, German, the sounds shift in a consistent direction.
Give me an example.
Okay, take the voiceless stop, P. In Latin, you have pater, but in the Germanic languages, that P consistently softens into an F sound. So pater becomes
Father.
father.
Okay, that's one word, but...
But it happens everywhere. Latin pater becomes English foot. Latin PGs becomes English fish.
So if I find a Latin word starting with P, I can basically bet money it'll start with F in English?
You win that bet almost every single time.
Okay.
And the rotation continues. Voiced sounds like D become voiceless T. So Latin dentist.
Tooth.
Latin duo.
Tooth.
Exactly. It wasn't random. It was a system. Grimm called it a Lautverschiebung, a sound shift.
That's wild. It's like a secret code that explains why English sounds different from Latin, but is still the same deep down. But did Grimm think these were hard laws like gravity? Or was he still in that romantic language is a plant mindset?
That is the catch. He was still a romantic. He called these tendencies. He famously said, the sound shift is a general tendency. It is not followed in every case. He believed language had a soul, and sometimes that soul just didn't want to follow the rules.
He was an ecologist, not an engineer.
Perfect way to put it. He documented the forest, but he didn't try to control the trees. That job fell to the next generation, to the systematizer, August Schleicher.
Schleicher seems like the guy who brings a spreadsheet to a poetry slam.
He absolutely brought order to the chaos. Schleicher's the one who gave us the visual we all use today, the family tree, the Stammbaum.
Which makes sense if you're thinking about evolution. Darwin is publishing around this time too, isn't he?
He is, and Schleicher was a huge fan of Darwin. He drew these diagrams showing the Ursprache, the proto-language branching off. But his biggest contribution might be a tiny piece of punctuation, the asterisk.
The asterisk, like on a keyboard.
Yeah. Schleicher introduced the convention of using an asterisk to mark a word that we have never ever found written down, but which mathematically must have existed based on the comparisons.
So he's reconstructing words that haven't been spoken for thousands of years.
He's reconstructing them. It's like paleontology. You find a dinosaur bone here, a bone there, and you build the rest of the skeleton. Schleicher believed his method was so accurate he could reconstruct the Proto-Indo-European language itself. He even wrote a fable in it.
The sheep and the horses. I saw that in the notes.
Aves Akvasas Ka. That's the title in his reconstructed Proto-Indo-European. It was a massive flex. He was proving that you could mathematically work backward to a language spoken before writing was even invented.
But Schleicher was still stuck on that language as an organism idea, wasn't he? He still thought language grew and decayed independent of humans.
He did. He thought a language was like a weed in a field. It grows whether you watch it or not, and that didn't sit well with the students coming up behind him.
Enter the punks, the gang of four.
The young grammatiker, the neo-grammarians, led by Karl Brugmann and Hermann Osthoff. These guys were the rebellion. They looked at Schleicher's trees and Grimm's souls and said, this is nonsense. Language isn't a plant. It doesn't have a life of its own. It exists only in the brains and mouths of the people speaking it.
So they're shifting from biology to psychology or uh, sociology.
In physics, they wanted linguistics to be a hard science. So they laid down two absolute dictums that changed everything. The first one is the exceptionalist sound laws.
Exceptionalist. That's a bold claim.
They argue that sound change proceeds with blind necessity.
Blind necessity. That sounds intense. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means the law doesn't care about the word. It doesn't care if the change makes the word hard to say or if it creates confusion. If the rule is T becomes D, then every single T becomes D. It is a mechanical, automatic process.
So if Grimm said it happens most of the time, these guys are saying, no, it happens every time, and if you think it didn't, you just haven't found the other rule yet.
Precisely. They treated exceptions as clues. If a planet isn't moving the way gravity says it should, you don't say gravity is merely a tendency. You say, there must be another planet pulling on it.
And this leads to Werner's law, right? This was the vindication.
It was. Carl Werner looked at the holes in Grimm's law, the places where the consonants didn't shift correctly. And instead of shrugging, he dug deeper. He realized that the stress pattern, where the accent fell on the word back in Sanskrit, was the hidden variable.
So the stress pattern of a word 3,000 years ago determined whether I say a T or a D today.
That's exactly it. It proved that what looked like chaos was actually a complex interlocking machine.
Incredible. What was the second dictum?
The uniformitarian principle. This is the idea that the forces changing language today are the exact same forces that changed it 2,000 years ago.
So no magic, ancient atmosphere, just people talking.
Right. Brugman basically said, if you want to understand how Proto-Indo-European changed, listen to how people are slurring their words in the marketplace today. He called the old way, ignoring the present, a sea voyage without a compass.
That makes the history feel so much closer. We aren't really different from our ancestors. We just have different vocabulary. Our brains work the same way.
And this shifted the entire field toward studying living languages and dialects. It made linguistics a social science.
So we have the tree model. We have these strict laws. But then someone comes along and says, actually, trees are a bit too simple. Enter Johannes Schmidt.
Schmidt saw a flaw in the family tree. Trees imply that once a language branches off, say, Germanic splits from Celtic, they never talk to each other again.
Which we know isn't true.
Of course not. Languages are neighbors. They borrow. They influence each other.
So how did he fix the model?
With waves. The wave theory. Imagine throwing a stone into a pond. The ripples spread out. Schmidt argued that linguistic changes spread like those waves, creating geographic boundaries, and these waves can overlap.
Okay, so a language can be part of one wave for its grammar, but a different wave for its vocabulary.
Exactly. It feels much more realistic to how humans actually interact. We don't just split and leave, we mix.
It introduced the complexity of contact. But before we wrap up this heroic age, we have to mention one absolute genius who kind of bridges the gap to the modern era, Ferdinand de Saussure.
Ah, yes.
I know that name. He's usually called the father of modern linguistics, right? Structuralism and all that.
He is. But his contribution to this specific story happened when he was just a university student. It's almost like a magic trick. He was looking at the Proto-Indo-European vowel system, and the math just didn't add up. The structure felt lopsided.
So what did he do?
He used internal reconstruction. He hypothesized that there must have been sounds, he called them sonant coefficients, that existed in the mother language, but had completely disappeared in all the daughter languages.
Oh, wait. So he's inventing sounds that no one has ever heard just to make the equation balance?
He's predicting them, purely based on the logic of the system. He said, there is a ghost in the machine right here.
Oh.
And for decades, it was just a theory, a brilliant theory, but a theory.
Until
archaeologists started digging up tablets in Turkey, written in Hittite, an ancient Indo-European language that had split off very, very early. And when they finally deciphered it in the 20th century, guess what they found?
No way.
Laryngeal sounds,
What?
80 sounds. And they were in the exact positions where Saussure had predicted the ghosts would be.
That gives me goosebumps. It's like an astronomer predicting a planet because of a gravity wobble, and then someone finds it with a telescope 50 years later.
It was the ultimate proof that the neo-grammarians were right. Language isn't random. It's a structure. It follows rules. And if you understand the rules, you can see things that have been lost for 5,000 years.
It's an incredible progression. In just 1 century, we went from Jones's hunch in a courtroom to Saussure predicting invisible sounds using algebra.
And we completely changed our view of what language is. We stopped seeing it as this magical biological plant that grows and decays. We learned that it's a social product, driven by the minds and mouths of the people who speak it, subject to mechanical laws.
Which brings me to the thought I want to leave you with today. The neo-grammarians talked about blind necessity. They said sound change happens mechanically, and often the speakers don't even realize it's happening.
They're just right. It's unconscious.
So if the uniformitarian principle is true, and the same things are happening now as they were then, what blind changes are happening to your language right now?
It's a fantastic and terrifying question. Are your vowels shifting in a way you can't hear, but your grandkids will? Are you slowly merging two sounds together without knowing it?
You think you're just talking, but you are actually a participant in a 10,000-year-old linguistic experiment, and you don't even know the results yet.
And that is the beauty of historical linguistics.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
A pleasure as always.
See you next time.